My name's Aaron, I'm 31, and until recently, I would have said I was close with my younger brother, Jake. We weren't those call every day kind of siblings, but we grew up tight, shared bunk beds, built Lego cities together, even covered for each other during high school parties gone sideways. When he moved 3 states over for a job in finance and met his now fiancée, Courtney, I was genuinely happy for him. I hadn't met her in person yet, but he'd sent me photos and gushed about her in texts. She's classy, he'd say. Sophisticated. She makes me level up, man. I didn't quite know what that meant, but I told him I was proud of him. When he hinted at proposing, I even offered to help with the ring. At first, he refused, but a few weeks later, he called and asked, somewhat sheepishly, if I was serious. Yeah, I said without hesitation. 10 grand. Just don't get scammed at a mall kiosk. I wired it the next day. No strings, no contract, just family. Fast forward to the week of the engagement party. Jake called me up and asked if I'd be coming. I live 9 hours away, but I said of course. I wouldn't miss it. Courtney's family is coming in from California, so it's gonna be big, he said. I booked a hotel for 2 nights, cleaned out my car, and loaded up a bottle of vintage wine I'd been saving since college, something I thought might make a nice engagement gift. I even bought a new dress shirt. I wanted to look sharp, especially if I was going to meet the future in-laws. I pulled into the event venue on a Saturday afternoon, a nice country club on the outskirts of town, and parked beside a sea of expensive SUVs and luxury sedans. Already, I felt slightly out of place. The moment I walked through the double doors, I saw Courtney. She was standing with 2 other women, laughing. Jake hadn't seen me yet, so I approached her first, smiling. Hi, you must be Courtney. I'm Aaron. She glanced at me, not smiled, not nodded, just scanned. Her eyes flicked from my shoes to my collar like she was trying to find a reason to be unimpressed. Then she leaned in slightly, tilted her head, and with this passive, sugary tone, said, "Oh, you showed up?" I blinked, thinking maybe I misheard her. But then she turned to one of the women beside her and muttered, loud enough for me to catch, "We already have too many nobodies here." The woman beside her let out a little chuckle like it was an inside joke. I stood there, stunned. I wanted to believe I misinterpreted the tone, or that maybe it was some weird attempt at dry humor, but the disdain on her face was unmistakable. She didn't introduce me to anyone, didn't call Jake over, just turned slightly, signaling the conversation was over. That's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was intentional. Dismissal, with a smile. And I wasn't about to stand there like a decorative coat rack, hoping someone would acknowledge I'd driven 600 miles to be treated like a nobody. I looked around the room. It was packed. Waiters floated by with champagne. Laughter echoed from polished corners of the space. Somewhere in the back, I spotted Jake, my brother, talking to what looked like her dad and a man in a gray blazer. For a split second, I thought about pushing through the crowd, finding him, telling him what she said. But then another thought hit me. If this is how she acted before marriage, when things are supposed to be polite and welcoming, how is she going to treat the rest of the family afterward? And more importantly, how did Jake not see this? I stepped outside. The sun was already beginning to dip, casting a soft glow over the parking lot. I sat in my car for a full 5 minutes, letting the heat soak into the seats, my fingers still wrapped around the wine bottle I never got to hand over. My phone buzzed, 2 texts from Jake. "Where are you?" Followed by, "Courtney said she saw you. Everything okay?" I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my banking app. The transfer I'd made for the ring, it hadn't been that long ago. And because I'd sent it via Zelle through my business account, and the funds hadn't fully settled into his yet due to a flagged transaction note, I still had a narrow window. I pressed reverse transaction. It pinged for a moment, then confirmed. My chest felt weird. Not triumphant, not guilty. Just solid. Like I was putting a brick back into place that had been loosened. I stared at the confirmation screen for another few seconds, then blocked both their numbers. The wine bottle stayed in the passenger seat. And as I pulled out of the lot, I glanced once in the rearview mirror at the glowing venue behind me, full of people who apparently did belong. That night, back at my hotel, I ordered a burger, sat on the bed, and posted one single screenshot to Instagram. The reverse transaction. 10 grand. Gone. Captioned simply, "Congrats to the happy couple. Hope entitlement pays better than I did." The next morning, my phone stayed quiet. No buzzing, no calls, no texts. It was like the world had collectively inhaled and decided to hold its breath. I checked my socials once. My post had already gathered a few subtle likes from cousins and old friends who, I suspected, knew exactly what it meant without needing an explanation. No one commented. Not publicly. But my DMs? Those started lighting up by noon. First was my cousin Lexi. Wait, was that real? Then my aunt, who always said Jake was too quick to fall in love. I had a feeling about her. And then a message from my old friend Malik, who had been at Jake's graduation years ago. Man, that's cold. You good? But not a word from Jake. I checked WhatsApp. He hadn't even opened the last message I'd sent him 3 days prior about road conditions on the way up. Still unread. Still gray. I could imagine the situation unfolding in real time. Courtney scrolling, seeing the post, realizing what it meant. Jake standing behind her, maybe at first confused, maybe thinking it was some sort of joke. Then realizing the money, the actual $10,000, was no longer theirs. That this wasn't symbolic. It was real. That night, I got an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then listened. It was Jake. His voice was tight, stressed. Aaron, listen, I don't know what happened yesterday. I'm trying to understand why you left without saying anything. Courtney said you were rude? I don't know, man. She said you made a scene. I didn't see anything myself. I was talking to her dad. But now this post? The transfer? Bro, this is really not cool. Can we talk? I stared at the wall for a long time before deleting the message. He still didn't get it. I hadn't made a scene. I hadn't raised my voice, hadn't even caused a ripple in their perfectly curated social spectacle. But to Courtney, my silence was the problem. She wanted to look down and have me stay there. Instead, I walked away. That didn't fit the narrative she'd crafted in her head, and now she was scrambling to rewrite it. And Jake? Jake was stuck trying to keep up, still spinning plates for someone who didn't see people, only utility. The next message came not from Jake, but from his fiancée. And this time, she didn't bother with fake pleasantries. Hey Aaron, not sure what the point of that post was, but it's incredibly childish and inappropriate. Jake is devastated. We had family flying in, vendors, everything. This was supposed to be a joyful day. Your little stunt made people ask questions. I don't know what you thought you were proving, but congratulations, I guess. You embarrassed yourself more than anyone. Hope it was worth it. That one, I screenshotted. For myself. As a reminder of how people show you who they are when they think you owe them something. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone for the day and drove to a nearby state park. Walked a trail I found by accident. Ate a sandwich in total silence, under a tree, while my thoughts played ping pong in my head. Was I overreacting? Maybe. But here's what stuck with me. I'd offered help without being asked. I'd driven nearly half a day to show support. I'd shown up, not for recognition, but because that's what family does. And the second I no longer served a role in her vision of the perfect celebration, I was dismissed like background noise. Not even with malice, worse, with indifference. 2 days later, things escalated. I came home to a letter in the mail. An actual printed letter, postmarked from Jake and Courtney's address. Inside was a carefully worded but icy message that read like it had been proofread by 3 different lawyers and 1 wedding planner. It started with, "We regret that tensions have escalated between us in a way that overshadowed what should have been a celebration of love and family." Then it moved to, "While we understand that emotions were high, your decision to revoke your generous contribution has created complications we're now left to resolve." And finally, "We kindly ask that you consider rescinding the funds as previously agreed. If not, we may have to explore other avenues to ensure commitments are honored." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because they thought they could guilt me into paying for the privilege of being insulted. That last line, especially, "explore other avenues," sounded like a threat wrapped in wedding lace. So I made a decision. If this was about optics, then I'd give them optics. I opened my laptop, pulled up a fresh post, and started writing. Not petty, not angry, just facts. I laid it out, that I gifted the ring money without condition, showed up with joy in my heart, was dismissed to my face like an uninvited ghost, and quietly removed myself. That I hadn't wanted drama, hadn't posted names, but they had pushed me to the point where now I felt no obligation to remain silent. I even included Courtney's text, no names, again, just screenshots with the names blacked out. The words spoke for themselves. I hit post. It went viral in hours. But that's where things really started to unravel. By the time I woke up the next morning, the post had over 11,000 likes and nearly 2,000 comments. I hadn't expected that. I figured maybe some mild traction, some Reddit-level justice for a messy sibling story. But this was wildfire. People dissected every line, praised the quiet walkout as classy, analyzed Courtney's text like it was a villain monologue, and most of all, flooded the thread with their own stories of being treated like outsiders by people who were supposed to be family. And that's when the DMs started again. But this time, it wasn't from family. It was from strangers. One message read, "Please tell me you didn't send the money again. You handled that like a boss." Another, "Bro, I got disinvited from my sister's wedding after I paid for her cake. I wish I had done what you did." People were invested. But the ones that really got to me were from other siblings, people who were always the helper, the fixer, the one who paid for dinner and never got a thank you. I didn't realize how many errands were out there until the internet showed me. But not everyone was on my side. My mom called that afternoon. I ignored it. She called again. Then came the voicemail. "Aaron, what is going on? Your brother just called me in tears. Courtney is humiliated. Her parents saw whatever it is you posted. I don't know what she said to you, but this has gone too far. It's public now. You need to fix this. We are a family. We are a family." That line hit me harder than I expected. Not because it was true, but because I had always believed in it, even when no one else seemed to live by it. I called her back. "Hey, Mom. Aaron. Thank God. Listen." "No," I interrupted. "You listen. Did Jake tell you what she said to me when I walked in?" She went quiet. I showed up. I brought a gift. I smiled. And she looked me up and down and said they already had too many nobodies there. "You think I made that up?" More silence. Then, her voice, softer now. "She may have mentioned something about a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding, Mom. She meant it. And you know what? It's fine. She can think whatever she wants. But I'm not paying for people who treat me like lint on their designer blazer." Her tone hardened again. "You didn't have to embarrass them." "No, Mom. They embarrassed themselves. I just held up a mirror." And with that, I hung up. I don't think I'd ever done that before. Hanging up on my mom wasn't something I thought I was even capable of doing. But something had cracked open in me. Not in a dramatic way. Just a slow, steady realization that I'd spent my entire life trying to earn scraps of approval from people who wouldn't even save me a seat at the table. Literally. Over the next couple days, Jake finally responded to the growing online firestorm. His first attempt was a vague Instagram story with some generic quote about family always finding a way back to each other. That got ratioed in the comments section by people linking my original post. Then Courtney posted a staged black and white photo of the two of them holding hands with a caption that read, "Sometimes the people you think are in your corner are only there to keep you in your place." That one? Oh, it backfired. Hard. Her comments were flooded. "Girl, you paid for your ring. Imagine insulting the wallet and still expecting to keep the gift. Sis, this is not the flex you think it is." A week passed. I figured things would eventually die down, and I'd go back to work and leave the circus behind. But then I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Uncle Drew. Now, Drew is one of those relatives that shows up at holidays with stories too wild to be real and a laugh that sounds like gravel in a blender. But he's also the guy who loaned my dad money when his business went under, never asked for it back, and once drove across 3 states to help my cousin move out of an abusive relationship. Basically, if anyone in the family could smell nonsense, it was Drew. "Kid," he said when I answered. "You've been busy." I laughed weakly. "Yeah, didn't mean for it to blow up." "Don't apologize," he said. "You handled that better than most would have. But listen, something's coming. You should be ready." "What do you mean?" "Let's just say, Courtney's folks don't like the bad press. Her dad's got connections. He's worried about how this makes them look. Word is, they're trying to dig into you." I sat up straighter. What does that even mean? I'm not famous. I'm not rich. I'm not. They don't care. They're used to power working for them. They think if they can discredit you, maybe they can rewrite the story, make you look unstable, bitter, that sort of thing. I figured you should know. I thanked him, hung up, and sat in total silence. Discredit me? For what? For refusing to fund my own humiliation? That night, I started locking everything down. Set my social profiles to private. Changed passwords. Double-checked my financial accounts. Because even if it sounded paranoid, I wasn't going to be the guy who shrugged it off and then got blindsided. Then, just when I thought the worst of it had passed, I got an envelope in the mail. Plain white. No return address. Inside? A printed screenshot of my Instagram post and a typed message. "This isn't over. Some things are bigger than you." Choose wisely. I stared at that typed message for a long time. The paper was thick, high quality. The kind used for resumes or courtroom letters. No handwriting, no return address. Just that line, centered and ominous. This isn't over. Some things are bigger than you. Choose wisely. It felt like the kind of vague, arrogant warning someone gives when they think intimidation works better than logic. And honestly, for a second, it did shake me. The fact that someone had taken the time to print a screenshot and physically mail it felt so theatrical, so specific, that I realized this wasn't just someone venting their frustration. This was a warning shot. I knew immediately where it had come from. Courtney's father, Rick, was a former district manager for some Fortune 500 company. I'd only ever seen him in photos, all of which looked like LinkedIn profile pictures with just a little too much smugness behind the smile. Jake had mentioned once that Rick ran his family like a business, and I finally understood what that meant. Control, image, leverage. Everything had to serve a narrative. And when it didn't, Rick found a way to spin it or crush it. This? This was spin. I didn't respond. I didn't tell Jake. I didn't post anything. Instead, I lawyered up. I had a friend from college named Serena who'd become a civil litigator. Brilliant, sharp as a tack, and someone who'd been by my side when I was broke, anxious, and starting out in the real world. I called her up and explained everything start to finish. She didn't even hesitate. "You need to get ahead of this," she said. "Because if they're willing to go this far over a social media post and 10 grand, they're trying to make you their cautionary tale. You embarrass them in a space they thought they controlled. They'll want to reestablish dominance." The next day, Serena filed a preemptive cease and desist letter. It wasn't aggressive, just formal and clear. It laid out the facts. I had every right to reverse the transaction given it was a gift and the transfer had not completed. I had not named names in my post. I had not violated any laws or engaged in slander. However, if attempts were made to harass or intimidate me, legal recourse would follow. We mailed a copy to Jake and Courtney's address, then one to Rick's home and his work address. Then, for good measure, Serena posted a redacted version of the letter to her professional page with a caption that simply said, "A reminder that threats don't always land quietly." And like dominoes, everything began to fall. I didn't hear from Jake directly, but my cousin Lexi did. She messaged me saying Jake had lost it after the letter arrived. Apparently, Rick had promised to clean up the situation, and now it was turning into a PR mess. Courtney's father had connections, sure, but not enough to bully a documented legal case into disappearing. They couldn't claim defamation without specifics. They couldn't touch me financially. And trying to paint me as a problematic sibling only backfired once people started asking why their golden boy needed my money to propose in the first place. 2 weeks later, another envelope arrived. This one had handwriting. Jake's. Inside was a card, the kind you'd find at a gas station last minute. It said, "Sorry," in gold letters, and nothing else. But inside, Jake had written, "I messed up. I know. I should have said something when she talked to you like that. I was scared. I still am. But this has spiraled, and I think you were the only one brave enough to walk away. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of this. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just didn't want to stay silent anymore." It wasn't much, but it was something. I sat with the card in my lap, wondering if I should reply, wondering if I wanted to. I thought about all the times I'd covered for Jake, supported him, made excuses for him when our parents praised his achievements and glanced over mine. I thought about the long car ride I'd taken, the wine bottle I never gave, the look on Courtney's face like I was some stray animal that had wandered into her polished party. And then I thought about that smile I gave her, the one I gave before I reversed the payment, before I blocked them, before I walked out. I'd never felt more calm in my life. So I didn't respond. Instead, I packed up the card with the letter and the envelope and tucked them into a folder. Not out of spite, but as proof. Proof that sometimes the people closest to you won't defend you. Sometimes they'll sit back and let others humiliate you, just to keep the peace. And when you finally stand up for yourself, you become the villain in their story. Let them write their story. I was writing mine too. I donated the $10,000 to a scholarship fund for first-gen college students from low-income backgrounds. I sent it in Jake's name, quietly. No announcement, no receipts, just a note that said, "To someone who deserves a future full of yes. Use it well." A week later, the engagement party video went private. Courtney's social media vanished. Jake's account became a blank profile photo. Mutual friends stopped asking questions. The world moved on. And so did I. I started traveling again, small trips at first. Places I'd always wanted to visit but kept putting off. I stopped trying to prove myself to people who only saw me as a backup plan. I started writing more, reconnecting with people who made me feel like I mattered, not like a budget line. The last message I got from Jake was months later. Just a text. They're calling off the wedding. I stared at it for a long time, wondering what reaction he wanted from me. Sympathy? Relief? A high five? Maybe none of that. Maybe just acknowledgement. But I didn't reply. Not out of anger. I just didn't need to. Because for once, the silence wasn't mine to explain. The silence was his. And it was long overdue. As for me, I'm good. I didn't lose a brother. I just stopped pretending I still had one. And truthfully, that's the most peaceful ending I could ask for. I'm Lily. I'm 31, and I've always been the responsible one in my family, the one who organizes things, smooths over drama, and ends up footing the bill when someone conveniently forgets their wallet. For years, I convinced myself that being the peacemaker was a badge of honor, that maybe one day they'd see how much I did for them and appreciate me for it. Spoiler, they never did. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what happened with the cruise, or how deeply I was about to be betrayed by the people I thought loved me. It started last spring. My mom had this grand idea to plan a once-in-a-lifetime family cruise to celebrate her and Dad's 35th anniversary. She pitched it over our monthly family Zoom, with the same wide-eyed excitement she used when talking about redecorating the living room or starting a garden she'd abandoned 2 weeks in. But I'll admit, this time it sounded nice. She wanted all of us together. Me, my younger sister Jenna, my brother Thomas, his wife and kids, even our grumpy Uncle Rick. 7 days through the Mediterranean, fancy dinners, shore excursions, the works. All we have to do is show up, she said. Except that wasn't true. She needed someone to organize it all, book the tickets, research the cruise lines, coordinate passports, and guess who she asked to help out? Yours truly. Now, I'm a project manager by trade. I do logistics for a living. So part of me enjoyed the control. I spent weeks poring over cruise line options, comparing prices, reading reviews. I negotiated a group package with a travel agent, reserved adjacent cabins, and even managed to secure a dinner reservation on the captain's night. I fronted the deposit myself, $4, 800, because everyone's money was tied up or payday hadn't hit yet, and we were on a deadline. My mom promised they'd all pay me back. And of course, because it was under my name, I was listed as the primary contact and booking owner. Keep that in mind. Things were fine at first. There was the usual flurry of group texts, outfit planning, itinerary suggestions, and passive-aggressive jabs from my mom about how Jen has been so busy with her new relationship and could I handle most of the organizing. Since I don't have a lot going on socially, whatever. I bit my tongue. I'd gotten good at that. Until one Sunday dinner at my parents' place, everything changed. We were eating on the patio barbecue, my dad's specialty, and everyone was chatting about shore excursions when Jenna, with this casual little grin, said, "Oh, by the way, I'm bringing Tyler on the cruise. We got engaged last week." Everything froze. My fork clinked against my plate, and my stomach dropped like a stone. Tyler? She was bringing Tyler? Tyler, who was my ex-boyfriend of 4 years. Tyler, who I lived with. Tyler, who proposed to me once and then ghosted me 6 weeks before our wedding, drained our joint account, and left me to explain to friends and vendors why there was no ceremony. That Tyler. I looked at Jenna, blinking. "You're engaged?" To Tyler. She rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. "Yeah, I thought you knew we were dating." I hadn't. Not one whisper. Not a rumor. Not a clue. The last time I heard anything about Tyler, he'd moved out of state. Apparently, they'd reconnected through mutual friends last year, and somehow Jenna decided dating her sister's ex-fiancé was totally normal behavior. I turned to my parents, waiting for them to react, to say something, to stop this madness. But Mom just smiled and said, "It's not ideal, but you know, love finds a way." I nearly laughed. "You're seriously okay with this?" With her bringing him? Dad cleared his throat and mumbled something about second chances, and Jenna leaned forward with this smug little smirk. "Look, Lily, it's not about you. This cruise is for Mom and Dad. Don't make everything personal." I stood up, shaking. I wanted to scream. But instead, I said, "If he goes, I don't." Mom frowned. "Lily, don't be selfish. Tyler's part of the family now." "No, he's part of her drama. And he left me. Do you not remember what he did to me?" Jenna crossed her arms. He made a mistake. People change. I'm happy now. Why can't you be happy for me? I stared at her. My sister. The girl who cried with me when Tyler disappeared, who helped me cancel wedding arrangements, who said she hated him. And now she was marrying him? Dragging him onto a trip I paid for? I walked out that night and didn't say another word to anyone for 2 weeks. Eventually, I got a text from Mom. We gave your spot to Tyler. He's covering his cost. Let us know if you change your mind. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement. I wasn't even asked. I was replaced. On a trip I spent months organizing and fronting money for. Something in me snapped. Not in a screaming, throwing things kind of way. In a cold, calculated, crystal clear way. I logged into the cruise account that night, still listed as the primary. I checked all the names. Sure enough, they'd added Tyler to my spot. Not a new booking. My reservation. And no one had updated the main contact. So I started making calls. To the cruise line. To the travel agent. I played dumb at first, just double-checking I'm still the owner of the group booking. Yep, still me. Can I make changes? Absolutely, as long as I could verify my ID and booking number, which I could. I waited. I gave them time to pack their bags, make their Instagram posts, load the car. Then, 2 hours before departure, I picked up the phone, gave them my credentials, and said, calmly, I'd like to cancel the group booking. All of it. The agent hesitated. You're sure? There are 9 people booked. Correct. Cancel it all. Please confirm the refund policy. There was silence. Then typing. Then the quiet, unmistakable click of every plan they'd made dissolving right in front of them. And then I waited. I knew what time they were supposed to check in at the port. I knew what pier. I knew the group itinerary. I even knew Jenna was planning to wear a white sundress for embarkation photos. What I didn't know was how they'd react. Until the text started rolling in. Lily, what did you do? Lily, call me right now. They won't let us board. They're saying it was canceled? Mom is crying. Dad is yelling. Tyler is freaking out. This isn't funny. You ruined everything. I sat on my couch, phone buzzing in my lap, and for the first time in years, I smiled. But I didn't reply. I didn't reply that day. Or the next. I turned off my phone and drove upstate to a quiet cabin I'd rented in advance, where I had no signal, no guilt, and absolutely no intention of dealing with the fallout. I had a stack of novels, a playlist of music I hadn't listened to since college, and for the first time in years, a full week to myself with no expectations, no family guilt tripping, no emotional blackmail. Just peace. While they were standing in line at the port screaming at a confused cruise staff about how this had to be some mistake, I was sitting on a deck sipping iced coffee with a wool blanket wrapped around my legs and the sun on my face. I didn't even tell my friends what I'd done. Not yet. I needed a few days to process it myself. When I got back into signal range 5 days later, my phone blew up the second I turned it on. Missed calls. Voicemails. Long text messages in all caps. My mom had sent me 14 messages in a row, varying between, how could you? And please just explain what's happening. One voicemail from my dad was just him sighing for 23 seconds before muttering, this is ridiculous, and hanging up. Jenna sent the most. Pictures of her standing by the terminal in tears, one of her luggage by the curb, and then a long message that just read, I cannot believe you'd ruin Mom and Dad's anniversary like this. You are so spiteful and petty, it's actually disgusting. Tyler and I didn't deserve this. You ruined everything. Don't ever contact me again. And then, 20 minutes later, another message. Also, the cruise line won't issue a refund. You're the one who canceled. So guess what, genius? You owe all of us the money back. $8,000. Pay up. I laughed. Out loud. Sitting in my car in the middle of a grocery store parking lot. Just straight up laughed. Because of course she didn't read the fine print. Of course she didn't understand how bookings work. The refund was processed to me. I'd taken out cancellation insurance when I booked the cruise, knowing how flaky my family could be. I filed the claim the day after canceling. I wasn't out a dime. In fact, after some negotiation with the agent and a fee or two, I got nearly 95% of the total cost back in my account within a week. They got nothing. No cruise. No photos. No Mediterranean cocktails. No spa day. No formal dinner. Nothing. I didn't respond right away. I wanted them to stew. To let it sink in. To really understand what it felt like to be dismissed, replaced, and ignored like I didn't matter. And then, 3 days later, when the messages started tapering off into silence, I finally sent one text in the family group chat, Short, cold, and crystal clear. You all decided I didn't matter. You gave my spot to the man who ruined my life, and not one of you defended me. You chose Tyler over your own daughter/sister. So I made a choice, too. Actions have consequences. I'm done being your doormat. That was it. No, let's talk. No open-ended olive branch. I wasn't looking for reconciliation. I was done. My mom called within 5 minutes. I didn't answer. The next morning, I woke up to a novel in my inbox, an email from her, full of emotional manipulation. We didn't think you'd actually cancel. You always take things too far. We were just trying to move on. She even had the audacity to write, Tyler is a good man now. Jenna deserves happiness. I deleted it. Later that week, I got a call from my cousin Melissa, who wasn't on the cruise but had apparently heard about the chaos through the family grapevine. She's always been one of the few in the family who actually listens and doesn't get swept up in the drama. When I answered, the first thing she said was, please tell me it's true. You really did it. I told her everything. She laughed so hard she snorted. I'm sorry, but that's the most savage, well-deserved thing I've ever heard. They're still furious. Your mom's been telling everyone you hacked the cruise line. That's when I knew they hadn't told the whole truth. They were spinning the narrative, painting me as unstable, impulsive, bitter. A woman scorned. But I didn't care. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't explaining myself. I wasn't chasing their approval. I wasn't begging to be treated like I mattered. I was just free. Then came the kicker. A letter. Not an email, not a text. A handwritten letter from Jenna. It arrived in a cream-colored envelope a few weeks after the dust had mostly settled. Her handwriting, still the same bubbly loops from when we were kids, filled the page front and back. I sat on the couch, heart pounding, expecting a bomb. But what I got was worse. It was fake forgiveness. She wrote that she understood I was hurting, that she should have told me sooner, but that family is about forgiveness, and holding grudges is what destroys relationships. She never apologized, not really. Never admitted what she did was cruel. And she ended the letter by saying she hoped I'd be mature enough to attend their wedding, as a guest, of course. That was the moment I realized she genuinely believed she'd done nothing wrong. And I had one final decision to make. I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and stared at it for a good 10 minutes. My hands were steady, my breathing calm, but inside, something ice-cold had settled in my chest, a resolve I hadn't felt before. Because if Jenna thought I was going to read her passive-aggressive non-apology and come crawling back into the fold with some weak smile and a gift from her registry, she had another thing coming. I wasn't going to write her back. I was going to show her. Now, remember that cruise refund? I didn't tell anyone where it went, and they all just assumed I'd spend it on myself. Maybe a vacation, maybe clothes. In truth, I'd done something a little different. After months of holding back, I used that money to launch something I'd been dreaming about for years, my own consulting business. I'd had the idea simmering for ages, and the funds from the canceled cruise were exactly what I needed to finally make it real. Website, branding, legal filings, client outreach. I dove into it with the energy of someone who had nothing to lose and a lifetime of resentment to burn. And then, I got lucky. Or maybe I was just good. One of my old colleagues from a previous job heard about my services through the grapevine, and within a month, she brought me on to consult for her growing tech startup. That one contract led to another, and then another. And before I knew it, I had 5 clients, consistent income, and more peace of mind than I'd ever had in my life. I was working for me now. No more toxic bosses, no more family drama distracting me from deadlines, and best of all, no one second-guessing whether I mattered. That's when I got the wedding invitation. It arrived in late September. Jenna and Tyler had set the date for early November. It was a fancy card with gold foil edges, a picture of them standing on a dock at sunset, smiling like a Hallmark movie ad. And on the RSVP, in handwriting that wasn't Jenna's, someone had added in pen, please let us know if you've moved past things. I stared at it. Moved past things? They thought this was a petty squabble. Like I'd borrowed a sweater and forgot to return it. Like I hadn't been publicly humiliated, emotionally gutted, and thrown aside by the people who were supposed to protect me. They wanted me to come and clap politely while my sister married my ex-fiancé, to sit in a pew and smile while he slid a ring onto her finger. And so, I made my plan. You see, Jenna had always been obsessed with appearances. She curated her Instagram feed like it was a lifestyle brand, constantly posted about her journey, her healing, her chosen family. She wanted her wedding to be a social event, an image, and I knew just how to shatter it. I RSVP'd yes, not because I was going to attend, but because it gave me time and access. I started with the venue. I called and, pretending to be Jenna's assistant, her wedding planner had apparently quit over creative differences a few weeks earlier. I confirmed that I was allowed to send materials in advance to be set up on the day. The woman on the phone didn't question me. I used the same voice I used to manage clients, polite but firm. Yes, the bride just wants to make sure these personal letters from loved ones are displayed on the guest book table. Very sentimental. Then I got to work writing a letter. Not to Jenna, to Tyler. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't cruel. It was factual. I included the date he emptied our joint account, the receipts, the screenshots of our last messages before he ghosted me, the catering deposit I had to eat, and even a copy of the therapy bill I racked up trying to piece myself back together after he left. I printed it on heavy parchment paper, sealed it in an envelope with his name on it, and included a small note on the front that said, "You forgot some things. Thought you might want them back." I mailed it to the venue. I also scheduled a little something else, a Google ad. See, Jenna and Tyler had created a wedding hashtag. It was on the invite, on their wedding website, even included in the ceremony program. And they were encouraging guests to use it. What they didn't realize is that hashtags can be indexed. I bought a few targeted ads connected to that hashtag. Anyone who clicked on it during the wedding weekend, anyone searching photos, would see a sponsored post that read, "Curious about Tyler and Jenna's love story? You might want to read this first." It linked to a private blog post. Not dramatic, not emotional, just a calm, detailed recounting of my experience with Tyler. Dates, facts, screenshots, no commentary, just the truth. I didn't know how many people would see it. I didn't care. It wasn't for them. It was for me. A line in the sand. And the best part? I didn't even go to the wedding. I booked a weekend at a spa resort 2 hours away, turned off my phone, and let the storm unfold without me. I don't know exactly what happened when Tyler opened that letter, or how many people clicked on that ad during the reception. I don't know if the whispers started before or after the cake cutting, or if Jenna saw it right away or not until days later when the tag stopped working. What I do know is this. When I turned my phone back on Sunday night, I had 32 missed calls. 3 from Jenna, 4 from my mom, 17 from Tyler. The rest? From numbers I didn't recognize. No voicemails, no texts, just silence. And that silence? It was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. When I saw the flurry of missed calls, I didn't panic. I didn't even flinch. I turned my phone face down on the coffee table and let it buzz itself into exhaustion. The days of me rushing to smooth things over were over. I wasn't that girl anymore. But I was curious. So I opened my laptop, pulled up the analytics from the ad campaign, and smiled. Over 2,100 people had seen the post. Nearly 800 had clicked through to the blog. The wedding hashtag? Scrubbed. Deleted from their Instagram captions. Their wedding website now redirected to a 404 page. Poof. Gone. Later that evening, I received one email. Just one. It was from Tyler. No subject line. No greeting. "You're unbelievable. You ruined my life. I hope it was worth it." I stared at that sentence for a long time, sipping chamomile tea like it was champagne. Then I hit reply and typed, "No, Tyler. You ruined your own life. I just told the truth." Then I blocked his email address. Permanently. A few days later, the real fallout began. Melissa, my cousin, called me in disbelief. "Did you hear what happened after the wedding?" "Nope," I said casually, folding laundry with one hand and holding the phone with the other. She was practically breathless. So apparently, after the letter got opened, yes, during the reception, by the way, there was a full-blown fight between Jenna and Tyler in the bridal suite. He accused her of setting him up. She screamed that he never told her any of what he did to you. She slapped him. He stormed out. Alone. I blinked. He left the wedding? Left. Didn't even spend the night. Their honeymoon flights were canceled. And get this, Jenna posted a photo the next morning of her alone in her wedding dress with a caption that just said, "Sometimes, love isn't enough." I nearly choked on my tea. Melissa went on. "Your mom's been trying to spin it as a bump in the road, but Aunt Grace told me your parents are furious that you embarrassed the family. Jenna's not speaking to anyone. She thinks everyone was in on it. And Tyler? Word is he's trying to move back in with his parents. Good. Let him explain that to his mom." I spent the next few weeks completely unbothered. I poured myself into growing my business, which, by the way, only gained traction thanks to the unexpected traffic from the blog post. A few women in tech who'd seen the story reached out privately, asking about my consulting services. Some just wanted to thank me for speaking up. Others hired me. Funny how speaking your truth opens more doors than staying silent ever could. 1 month later, I got a letter in the mail. This time from my mother. It was stiff, overly formal, and clearly written through gritted teeth. She apologized for the lack of foresight and the misunderstanding with the cruise. She said the family regretted how things unfolded and hoped I'd be willing to rejoin them for Thanksgiving. There was no mention of what Jenna did, no accountability, no acknowledgement of how deeply I'd been betrayed. Just a hollow olive branch wrapped in guilt and entitlement. I didn't reply. Instead, I donated $2,000 from my cruise refund to a women's shelter downtown and dropped off 2 boxes of supplies the next day. The staff hugged me. A resident cried when I handed her a brand new coat. It was the warmest holiday season I've ever had. By Christmas, I'd moved to a new city. Bigger, busier. No more running into family at the grocery store. No more awkward invitations. Just me, my clients, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I'd walked away without burning myself to keep anyone else warm. I unfollowed them all, deleted their numbers, blocked the guilt, shut the door, and I've never looked back. Because when someone tries to replace you on a cruise you planned, with the man who broke you, you don't chase after the boat. You cancel the whole thing and sail off on your own terms. Alone, but free.